intern, they used to give me the feedback that, we generally hear from all the professionals and we are only the note takers. So when we will become the speakers. So, and this is exactly from that intention, I thought that I would start this initiative we call Interns Talk, which is, I think already Ms. T has already introduced you as a platform. So we actually encouraging initially with all our ADPC interns, but of course any other interns that would like to come as a speaker and speak, choosing their subject of their liking. So with this, I also like to request all of you, what we call is like, subscribe, and something, which is exactly the case. I really want this particular platform to be there, and not only for because since this is online, so anybody from anywhere in the globe within the time frame that we have. So I would like my colleagues in Ethiopia or Asia or the Pacific, anywhere to connect. As we say that this is actually interns talk, so I should not be talking on behalf of ADPC as the executive director. This is my wish and this is my vision all the time, to give the platform to the young people, because I myself have seen, and I am very privileged to have anchored or supervised a large number of interns in ADPC. And my story has always been that whoever has walked into ADPC that they want to do an intern, I say that, okay, just do it. And perhaps this is exactly what also has happened with Aleema and Tanya in this case, although they must have wanted to do much more, but this is how we started. And today I am very happy. I have seen their work. I have seen their output. So I'm very, very confident that the way they present themselves, which is really a matter of pride, that my next generation, how I call it, that, they really are putting a lot of effort. So with this, I would just like to congratulate both of you, Aleema and Tanya. I think you are on the last week or 10 days of your initial intern, but I wish you the best for your remaining of your master's course, and also give our regards to your teachers. Share good thing about ADPC or the thing that you have observed about ADPC to your organization, and also spread the word around your networks and others, that if somebody would like to come and speak, we may not be able to provide internship to everybody, by the way, as we all know the reality. But this is actually my wish, that one way or other, if you want to practice, you want to learn, you want to contribute, this is exactly how ADPC will treat you. So with this, all the best to both of you, and I'm really looking forward to hear. And thanks also, Ms. T, to taking up the center stage. And I want to also assure you that under the ADPC's Academy's role and the leadership that this important unit of ADPC has, we will continue this as every month's event. So please help us doing that. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aslam. Thank you so much for your beautiful words. So, without further delay, let's dive into our discussion. So, Aleema, could you start by sharing with us what is a fiscal risk in the context of disaster and climate change, and why does it matter? Please, Aleema.
Thank you for the question, Lynn. Let's start with a metaphor to make this concept as clear as possible. Imagine a nation's government as the head of a very large household. They have a steady income, taxes from citizens and businesses, and a list of planned expense. Building new roads and funding schools, paying salaries, and so on. They have a budget for all of this, and things are running smoothly. Now imagine an unannounced catastrophic event, a massive flood or a prolonged drought. This is like a sudden, gigantic, and completely unbudgeted expense that hits the household. Fiscal risk is the financial what if on a national scale. It's the possibility that a disaster will force the government finances to deviate wildly from its plans and forecasts, leading to a finance double whammy. Here's the breakdown. First, there's a huge expenditure explosion. The government on immediate rescue operations, providing relief to those affected, and then the long-term multi-year process of rebuilding critical public infrastructure like hospitals, roads, and power grids. Second, at the exact same moment, there's a revenue collapse. The economic heart of the affected region slows down or stops completely. Businesses can't operate, people lose their livelihoods, and tax revenue plummets. So money is pouring out at the very moment the income streams are drying up. And this is not just about natural disasters. Climate change introduced two key risks. First is physical risk. There are the direct impacts we just discussed, the flood, fires, and droughts. They can also be slow onset events like sea level rise and desertification. Second is transition risk. This is fascinating one. It's the financial risk a country faces as the world shifts to a low carbon economy. For example, a country that relies on fossil fuel exports could see its income plummet due to new international policies like the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism. The matter profoundly because the financial consequences are staggering and they are escalating. According to a recent UN report, the direct cost of disasters have grown to about $180 to $200 billion annually between 2001 and 2020. But here's the fun and alarming fact. When you include the hidden or cascading cost, the long-term impacts on health, education, ecosystem, and supply chains, the real global cost now exceeds an astonishing $2.3 trillion annually. That's almost 10 times the reported direct losses. Let's look at an example. The 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan caused production losses not only there, but also in factories as far away as the United States, showing how interconnected our global economy is. But this is not just a one-size-fits-all problem. Vulnerability is relative. The number speaks for themselves. In 2023, North America had over $69 billion in direct disaster losses. It was only about 0.2% GDP. Compare that to Micronesia, which had a fraction of the losses of around $4.3 billion, but with a devastating impact of 46% of its sub-regional GDP. This is because developing nations often have less financial capacity to absorb these shocks. And what's the consequence for us as citizens? When a government has to borrow heavily to cover these unbudgeted costs, it can lead to higher interest rates on things like our own mortgages and our car loans. It can also fuel inflation, which erodes the purchasing power of every family. So why does fiscal risk matter? It matters because it is no longer invisible. Hypothetical line item on a spreadsheet. It is a direct and escalating threat to a nation's financial stability, our personal finances, and our long-term property. It is fundamental challenge we must address head on, not after the fact. I guess this answers your question. Lynn, you
Lynn,
are
I think
mute.
Thanks so much, Aleema, for your insight and sharing. Concerning solution pathway, what specific strategies and tools are ADPC implementing to help governments identify, assess, and mitigate their exposure to disaster-related fiscal risk? Tanya, can you share with me some of your thoughts, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for your question, Lynn. Esteemed attendees, the Asia Pacific region faces an extraordinary economic challenge as natural disasters inflict annual losses exceeding over $300 billion, equivalent to the total economic output of major nations. This staggering financial burden consistently overwhelms the governmental preparedness, forcing admissions into reactive emergency funding approaches that undermine long-term fiscal stability and economic development. The Asian Disaster Preparedness Center has emerged as the region's premier solution for this crisis. Since its establishment in 1986, with its headquarters in Bangkok, ADPC has evolved beyond the conventional disaster response, serving over 40 plus nations in the Asia Pacific. The organization's distinctive approach centers on proactive economic resilience building rather than post disaster recovery, fundamentally transforming governmental disaster preparedness strategies. ADPC's comprehensive methodology operates through three interconnected strategic pillars to address the complex nature of disaster-related fiscal vulnerabilities. The foundation rests upon advanced risk assessment capabilities that integrate cutting-edge analytical framework, combining satellite technology, climate data, and economic indicators. These sophisticated multi-hazard modeling systems provide continuous monitoring of vulnerable assets through real-time exposure quantification supported by decades of historical disaster data. Expert consensus confirms that effective multi-hazard assessment paired with precise exposure and data forms the cornerstone of sound decision-making by the governments. Thailand exemplifies this approach's effectiveness, where ADPC's assessment tool revealed that a single major flood could cost around $40 million, 15% of the national budget. This revelation prompted immediate policy responses and enhanced the preparedness protocols, demonstrating the transformative power of accurate risk quantification. The second pillar establishes pre-arranged financing mechanisms that automatically activate when disasters reach predetermined thresholds. These innovative financial instruments include catastrophe bonds that converts to grants upon specific disaster triggers, contingent credits providing 72-hour emergency funding access, regional risk pooling arrangements enabling collective catastrophic risk sharing, and parametric insurance delivering rapid payouts based on the measurable fiscal parameters rather than the lengthy damage assessments. The Pacific Catastrophe Assessment and Financing Initiative illustrates these mechanisms' effectiveness, protecting 15 Pacific Island nations through ADPC's methodologies. When Cyclone Palm devastated Vanuatu in 2015, the nation received $1.9 million within 2 weeks, bypassing the traditional bureaucratic delays and assessment procedures. The third pillar emphasizes capacity development and knowledge transfer through comprehensive training programs. ADPC provides technical assistance for national disaster risk financing strategy development, creates knowledge exchange platforms, connecting regional practitioners, delivers policy advisory services, integrating risk financing into the national budgets. ADPC's quantitative achievements demonstrate substantial regional impact. Over 40 countries currently operate ADPC-supported risk financing mechanisms with $2.8 billion in pre-arranged financing activated since 2015. Emergency funding response times have decreased dramatically from 6 months to 2 weeks, while investments generate a remarkable 1:4 return ratio. That means each dollar invested saves $4 in post-disaster recovery cost. Sri Lanka demonstrated practical application where Treasury receives automated alerts when meteorological conditions suggest a potential cyclone with damage exceeding over $500 million, enabling a 72-hour advance contingency fund activation. ADPC's influence extends beyond the government applications as private insurers adopt these frameworks for innovative disaster products. International development banks incorporate ADPC's principle into climate resilient lending. Municipal governments implement localized risk financing mechanisms, and regional organizations coordinate cross-border emergency responses. ADPC's fundamental significance transcends technical capabilities, representing a strategic transformation from reactive disaster recovery financing to proactive resilience financing. This philosophical evolution protects millions of individuals and billions in economic assets across the Asia Pacific region. In a region where national disasters represent inevitability rather than possibility, ADPC's financial frameworks ensure continuous government capacity for immediate, effective, and sustainable disaster response. The organization demonstrates that strategic disaster financing prepares and preserves financial resources while protecting human lives, maintaining economic livelihoods, and safeguarding national economies. The organization's evolution proves that appropriate analytical tools, strategic frameworks, and comprehensive preparation enable governments to transform their greatest vulnerabilities into the sources of institutional strength and regional stability. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Tanya, for your meaningful insights. So the next question, in collaborating with the National Ministry, International NGOs. From your point of view, Aleema, what are the primary benefits and the most significant challenges in building a cohesive framework for fiscal risk management?
Okay. Thank you for that incredibly important question. It gets to the heart of the matter. How do we turn theory into practice? Building a cohesive framework for fiscal risk management requires a powerful and often challenging collaboration between national ministries, international NGOs, and academic institutions. Each bring distinct strengths and weaknesses to the table. Let's start with the benefits of this collaboration. When it works, the partnership creates a synergy that is far more effective than any single party working alone. National governments bring a universalistic approach to disaster response with the mandate and resources to provide broad, large scale support to all victims. They have the ability to enact legislation and policy changes that can influence long term resilience. The Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, as a regional organization, works hand in hand with these government lines, agencies, and national disaster management authorities from countries like Nepal, Pakistan, and the Philippines. Interestingly, ADPC was first established in 1986 as a project under the Asian Institute of Technology, which highlights the long history of academia and regional government working together to address disaster preparedness in Asia. On the other hand, international NGOs like Mercy Corps and Oxfam International, both partners of ADPC, are often deeply embedded in local communities. Their organizational flexibility, close engagement, and the informal work style allows them to deliver services to vulnerable groups at a lower cost with a more community oriented approach, reaching people who might otherwise be missed. Then we have improved policy and practice. A continuous dialogue between government and NGOs can foster a great understanding between the two, which can lead to policy changes and the replication of successful micro level projects on a large scale. The cross disciplinary cooperation can translate political commitment into tangible on the ground action. A prime example of this is the APP, Asian Partner Preparedness Partnership, an interagency platform launched by ADPC that brings together national disaster management organizations, civil society networks, and the private sector to strengthen the preparedness and response at the local level. The APP, funded by partners like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, USA, promotes regional cooperation and provides a forum for stakeholders to share good practices and lessons learned. A fun fact about this type of work is that the process of designing a comprehensive disaster risk financing strategy, like structuring a catastrophe bond, has a powerful co-benefit. It can force different government agencies from finance to disaster management to collaborate and share data, improving their overall institutional capacity. This is not a theoretical concept. Following the devastating 2023 earthquake in Turkey, a pre-arranged parametric reinsurance fund, which is heavily reinsured by international partners, released $275 million almost immediately. The involvement of ADPC and its NGO partners make it possible to reach victims in cut-off zones and deliver humanitarian aid where it is needed the most. This is crucial for both immediate response and long-term recovery. An NGO can focus on sector-specific issues like livelihood, social mobilization, and the creation of community assets to accelerate social and economic recovery after a disaster. Collaboration offers an opportunity to pool different expertise and perspectives. Sharing data on disaster losses and damages is essential for raising awareness, conducting analysis, and taking joint action to improve local disaster risk reduction. In this regard, ADPC works with partners like UNDRR, United Nations Development Programme, and the World Meteorological Organization to enhance disaster tracking systems and provide more comprehensive and localized data on losses and damages, which is crucial for making informed decisions. Despite these clear benefits, this collaboration is far from simple and faces some significant challenges. Building a cohesive framework is often challenging due to the lack of coordination and significant differences in organizational culture, processes, and system between government ministries and the NGOs. These distinct motivations and even competitions for limited resources can hinder effective collaboration. For NGOs, sustained participation in these partnerships requires predictable funding framework that can accommodate the time, effort, and the flexibility needed for multi-stakeholder work. Political tensions between different jurisdictions can also be a challenge. While government can increase their human and analytical capabilities, some may not fully integrate climate and disaster risks into their long-term growth and investment strategies. This disconnect can make it difficult for different ministries such as Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Environment to collaborate effectively and co-lead on issues like national climate strategies. In conclusion, I will say while the path is fraught with challenges, the prospect of safeguarding lives and assets through a concerted effort on disaster risk reduction is a powerful motivation. It requires all stakeholders, governments, the private sector, civil society, and academia to step beyond their comfort zones to create the robust, multi level partnerships that are essential for building a more resilient future.
Thank you so much, Aleema. I believe that me and as well everyone here can be more illustrated by your answer for the question. So for the last question regarding the future pathway, what are the most critical and actionable next steps for the policymakers to move from the discussion to the implementation in building long-term fiscal resilience against disaster, in your opinion, Tanya?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question again, Lynn. Despite the well-documented frameworks for disaster fiscal resilience and compelling evidence of their effectiveness, we confront a critical challenge: the substantial gap between the policy disclosure and the practical implementation. Our fundamental question today is not whether disaster fiscal resilience matters, but how we transform theoretical knowledge into concrete measures that safeguard our nation's economic stability. This implementation urgency cannot be overstated. The World Food Programme in 2024, in its findings, it identifies the previous year as the warmest in 175 of recorded observations, generating unprecedented weather-related disasters that threaten vulnerable populations worldwide. The expanding crisis protection gap drives global hunger, economic instability, leaving affected communities without essential financial recovery support following successive catastrophic events. The first critical step in this implementation journey requires establishing comprehensive impact measurement systems. Research from the Pew Charitable Trust emphasizes that decision makers must systematically measure, track, and report complete disaster fiscal impacts to inform policymakers about the full spectrum of the disaster management expenses. This transcends basic accounting, constituting the foundational intelligence architecture upon which all subsequent policy formulation must be based. Governments shall deploy integrated disaster cost tracking systems, capturing the direct expenditures, the indirect economic losses, and the long-term recovery investments. These systems must operate continuously rather than reactively, delivering real-time fiscal risk assessments that guide budget planning process. Evidence demonstrates that nations lacking comprehensive tracking consistently underestimate exposure by 40 to 60%, resulting in inefficient preparation and excessive crisis borrowing. The second imperative involves institutionalizing disaster risk financing within government structures. The Global Assessment Report of 2025 stresses that effective strategies must integrate risk reduction, risk transfer, and enhanced risk management. Policymakers must establish dedicated disaster risk financing units within finance ministries equipped with technical expertise and decision-making authority. These units require cross-ministerial coordination mandates, ensuring that the disaster fiscal risk considerations permeate infrastructural planning, social protection programs, and economic developmental strategies. The World Bank's evidence demonstrates that the countries that implement such institutional arrangements achieve 50% faster recovery and superior fiscal stability during these crisis periods. The third essential component involves developing multi-layered financial protection strategies. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, in their report of 2024 to 2025, emphasizes that increasing country support with financing framework and strengthened capacity for identifying gaps requires comprehensive risk clearing strategies that move beyond single instrument approach towards integrated protection mechanisms. Governments shall develop tiered response mechanisms combining budget reserves for frequent low-impact events, contingent credit facilities for moderate disasters, and risk transfer instruments such as catastrophe bonds for extreme events. Furthermore, individual national approaches, while necessary, provide insufficient contemporary disaster risk scales and frequencies. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 provides the global cooperation blueprint, yet regional implementation remains inconsistent. Countries must actively engage in regional risk pooling arrangements, sharing both financial burdens and technical expertise. Successful regional mechanisms like the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, as well as the Pacific Catastrophe Risk Assessment and Financing Initiative, demonstrate that regional approaches reduce individual country cost by 20 to 30% while providing enhanced coverage and accelerated response capabilities. The fourth critical implementation step involves developing a robust analytical capability within the government systems. The World Bank also emphasizes that governments must strengthen their capacity for informed disaster risk finance decisions based on sound actuarial analysis. This analytical capacity must be integral to the government's competency. The fifth concern, integrating disaster risk considerations into the broader development planning process. Researchers indicate that disaster cycles of costly response and slow recovery significantly impede the long-term economic development of the nation and also reduces the household income growth. Breaking these cycles require embedding resilience considerations into all major policy decisions, extending beyond emergency management to encompass urban planning, infrastructural development, social protection systems, and economic policy formulations. In conclusion, the transition from discussion to implementation demands immediate, coordinated action across these five critical areas. Countries acting decisively now will maintain development trajectories while projecting their citizens' welfare despite the escalating climate changes. Thank you all for your attention to this critical implementation crisis.
That's what is very articulated and outstanding response from Tanya. Thank you so much. And now we will move forward to the Q&A section. And I have here with me several questions from our participants today. The first question is from Nanmiap as follows. As a disaster risk management student in Nigeria, I observe how fiscal pressure like debt servicing and competing social priorities often make it difficult to prioritize resilience investment in critical infrastructure. So from your points of view and your experience, what practical entry points can students and young professionals like me explore to contribute to integrating fiscal resilience into disaster preparedness in a country like Nigeria? Tanya, I'd love to hear your voice, please.
Thank you for the floor again, Lynn. And thanks to Ms. Miap for this insightful question of yours. Firstly, I would like to recommend seeking active opportunities with your local and even international NGOs, academic research projects, or development agencies that focus on disaster risk reduction, as these organizations frequently welcome enthusiastic interns who can contribute to pilot projects while gaining practical experience in fiscal risk planning. Secondly, consider engaging with community-based disaster risk reduction initiatives where you can develop your strong grassroots understanding how fiscal constraints impact local preparedness efforts. Thirdly, you can focus on building technical skills in risk assessment and economic analysis through online courses also offered by the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, professional development workshops, and collaborative research projects, as these competencies become increasingly valuable when advising decision makers who must justify resilience investments against the competing priorities. Those of us early in our careers, like me and like Aleema, our fresh perspectives combined with contemporary technical training and genuine commitment to addressing these challenges can contribute meaningfully to bridging the implementation gap between policy frameworks and practical application, as well as in Nigeria's unique fiscal and institutional context.
Thank you, Tanya. And for any of our participants here with us today, if you have any question for our interns, please drop it in the meeting chat and I will read them out loud for you, and so that our interns can answer your questions. So we will move to the other question from Suham Roy. So disaster often damage infrastructure and also put huge pressure on government finances. Do you think that investment in resilient infrastructure should be viewed not just as the disaster preparedness, but also as a means to mitigate financial risk for the government? Would you like to share something with us, Aleema?
So this is a critically important question. Thank you, Subham, for asking this. And my answer is an unequivocal yes. Investment in resilient infrastructure should be viewed not just as a disaster preparedness, but as a core strategy for mitigating a government financial risk. Disaster creates a massive unbudgeted fiscal burden, while the direct cost of disaster have grown to about $200 billion annually. The real cost, when you factor in cascading impacts on health, livelihood, and supply chain, exceeds an astonishing $2.3 trillion annually. This is a massive implicit financial liability government are holding. Investment in resilient infrastructure is a form of financial risk management. For example, building a hospital to withstand a storm protects a critical public asset and avoids billions in unbudgeted reconstruction costs. Ultimately, it's the single best way for a government to protect its balance sheet and ensure fiscal stability in the face of an unpredictable future. I hope it answers your question.
Lynn, you
So
are on
sorry, the
mute.
chat is closed for the webinar. So if you have any question, please raise your hands here and to ask them directly your question. And move to the other question we have here from Jignesh J. So how do you clearly identify critical infrastructure? Who does it, the government or the community? Tanya,
To
could you
precisely
provide
ask
some
to
answer?
sure, Lynn. To precisely answer your question, Mr. Jignesh, the identification of critical infrastructure represents a collaborative process that requires systematic coordination between the multiple stakeholders, with the government agencies typically serving as the primary coordinators in incorporating essential input from communities, private sector entities, and technical experts. Government authorities, particularly through national disaster management agencies, infrastructure ministries, and emergency planning departments, establish the foundational framework and criteria for critical infrastructure designation, often following internationally recognized standards that prioritize facilities essential for maintaining basic social functions, economic stability, and public safety. However, the private sector too plays an equally vital role in this identification process, particularly for infrastructures they own and operate, such as telecommunication networks, the energy systems, and the transportation facilities. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Tanya. And we have here the other question from Pratika. So can one of you provide us with some, critical analysis of your intern experience in ADPC and the way forward?
So Tanya and I interned with the RGF team at ADPC on CDRI 1 and 2 projects, which provided us with a valuable opportunity to understand how fiscal risk and government's dimensions are integrated into disaster resilience. We worked on GFVI calculation, IMAD algorithm-based change detection, and risk modeling, which gave us practical exposure to applying geospatial methods in resilience assessment. While we could deliver on our task, we also realize the need to further improve our critical engagement with frameworks and the way we communicate technical results for governance and policy context. We are sincerely grateful to Aslam sir, Anil sir, and Tariq sir for their continuous guidance and for giving us this opportunity. Going forward, we aim to deepen our expertise in fiscal risk analysis, strengthen governance-oriented perspectives in our work, and apply these skills more effectively in future projects, hopefully.
So this is a very personal question. So Tanya would you like to add something? Share something with us about your experience in ADPC?
Definitely. Since we were on the CDRI 1 and CDRI 2 project, we got a first-hand experience of assessing the fiscal risk resilience. And also, we come from a geoinformatics background. We have the technical acumen, but the on-ground experience by our extremely great mentors, Mr. Tariq and Mr. Anil. We are forever grateful for their guidance throughout the internship and throughout the project also. It was a great experience.
Thanks for sharing, and I'm very happy. Even for me, I'm also very happy to have my intern with Mr. Anin and to have the guidance from him. So it's a privilege that I have received from ADPC. So we'll move to the last question. We have here from Shari Bramble relating to the small island developing states. So the question as follows. The small island developing states, which often bear the brunt of climate change despite not being the main contributors, as far as we know that they contribute only 1% of gas emission worldwide, where would you focus your energy when considering disaster preparedness, fiscal risk, and resilience in critical infrastructure in the medium to long term? Tanya, do you like to share something?
Definitely. Thank you so much for your question, Ms. Bramble. So, when addressing disaster preparedness and fiscal resilience for small island developing states, I would focus primary attention on developing integrated regional cooperation mechanisms that leverage collective bargaining power and shared technical resources to overcome the individual capacity constraints, while simultaneously investing in locally appropriate climate adaptive infrastructure systems that can withstand multiple hazard scenarios. Given SID's limited fiscal space and disproportionate climate vulnerability, the most strategic approach involves establishing regional risk pooling arrangements similar to the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, which enables smaller nations to access sophisticated financial instruments and rapid post disaster funding that would prohibitively expensive to develop independently. The medium to long term strategy must also emphasize building indigenous technical capacity through regional training programs and knowledge exchange networks, ensuring that SIDS develop sufficient in country expertise to maintain and adapt to these systems over the time rather than remaining dependent on external technical assistance. Additionally, I would also advocate for innovative financing mechanisms that recognize SID's climate justice position, including for debt for climate swaps, climate adaptation bonds, and international solidarity funds that provide predictable, long term financing for resilience investments without exacerbating existing debt burdens, thereby enabling these nations to build comprehensive disaster preparedness systems that match the scale of climate risk they face despite their minimal contribution to the global emissions. Thank you for your question, Ms. Shari.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you once again, Aleema and Tanya, for your meaningful contributions. And a big thanks to Mr. Aslam for allowing us to organize this section today. And also thank for all our participants today. So now to wrap up today's section, I'd like to warmly invite Mr. Aslam back to the stage again to share his closing remark. Mr. Aslam, over to you.
Thank you, Misty. I think this should be the opening remarks, and that should continue all the time. First of all, thank you very much, Aleema and Tanya, for your good presentation and presenting the work that you have been doing for the last 3 months. Thanks to both Tariq and Anil as well. But I must tell you very honestly that the subject of fiscal risk and resilience, when we talk about how disaster affect our fiscal gaps, how the Ministry of Finance should allocate different sectors, this has been not an easy work, but the way in the just 3 months, you learn from by reading some of those documents and by working in some outcomes of those modeling exercise. I think you explain is even much better than me, which I could not do it for the last 2.5 years that I have been in the project. So kudos to both of you, and do continue explore. I think I am not sure. I think neither you should be very sure that this is exactly the way forward in your life, that you will always be doing work for fiscal risk assessment. I don't know what will happen after a couple of months, but this is how I like exploration. Anything that in our path that comes or we choose, we must do it in such a dedication and such as a learning exercise that actually it makes you enjoy that particular work. And this is what perhaps I have enjoyed this last 40 odd minutes listening to you very carefully and answering some of the questions. I certainly welcome further comments by any of the colleagues, that those who are here. Since this was our first interns talk webinar, we may not have been fully prepared, both from the technology as well as from the way we wanted to have. We certainly would like to have some more conversation through these ones, but the central focus, and as again I would repeat, the central focus for this webinar has been that let the intern speak, and it is for us whether we really understand them or not. And I'm pretty sure that we ourselves have to work very hard to match with the pace and the technology and the dedication to which you all just presented. I am wishing that over the period of time, whatever, let's say, suggestions that we would receive, I would request all the participants who has joined online, do send your feedback. I think I will ask the host of this intern that if there is any feedback, good or bad, whatever, one liner or one paragraph, do send, because it will further encourage Tanya and Aleema to do well when they're going back to their college or university after September perhaps, and then of course to the ADPC team. So with this, Mr. Thay, I think a wonderful job as well from your side. And I really commend the preparation to which this has been conducted. I personally did not want to touch base the subject itself. So that's why you may have observed that I did not spoke anything about the subject, because I really wanted to learn from you by unlearning my expertise and my work. So I think this was a great opportunity. I must thank all of you and the host. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. Thay.
Thank you so much for your beautiful words again, Mr. Aslam. And out of the role as a moderator, as a former intern at ADPC, I would like to express one of my thoughts. Well, I would like to say that ADPC has done a very great job for engaging the interns into the organization. And there's one more thing which is like very important that I want to express here, is that the interns at ADPC are the paid interns. So this is a matter that we are raising, like we are concerning about nowadays, because like my background, as far as you have known, that my background is in Italy, in Europe, and as it is very difficult here to find one like internship or traineeship which is paid. And usually like the paid internship is like very like competitive, and this is not for the Asian students. I would say there's a kind of like discrimination in this way. I'm not sure. I'm very sad for saying so, but I want to like emphasize on the fact that it's a very great opportunity, and there's no intern should like work like should be abused by the by the system and something. So very grateful for having these opportunities and being paid as a traineeship, because like I believe that we have I believe that
I can sense Ms. T, and be assured, and this is why I wanted all of you to be there, and I really appreciate you brought this point. I tell you one thing about ADPC, we really want an Asian leadership, an Asian expertise. I'm not saying that we will not have global expertise, but this is an organization which was created to bring back Asian expertise or create Asian expertise or create expertise who will care for Asia. So be assured, I think not only the internship, any progress in terms of the career path, ADPC would always be what we call not looking at getting the work done without cost, because all the efforts that we put, we must be honored. I'm not saying only about hefty salary, but something that we can proud of, and particularly for our young generations, it is actually an honor that you recognize their expertise by providing a kind of token. I will not say that we are paying very good, but a kind of a token, even if it is $1, I think it means a lot to our young generation, because then they feel that their efforts are being actually recognized. So thank you very much, T. I think you brought this one, and I knew you have been full of emotions, but at the same time, I know that the kind of expertise that you and others are bringing in ADPC is worth praising. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank once again every day. Thank Mr. Aslam, and thank Aleema and Tanya once again. Thank Tariq and Anil in co-organizing this section, and thank every participant of us today being here with us. Thank you everyone, and I hope you have a nice evening and afternoon ahead. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you.
much.